In this lesson, we're going to pack our UVs into a single UV space. Alright, so now we have our combined UVs, and we've done that by attaching all of the objects and applying an unwrap UVW. So what we want to do at this point is we want to make sense of what we see in the editor here. So the way that I like to do this is I like to come in and select different elements that go together, that have some sort of similarity, and I'll take those elements and then I'll pack them into the 0 to 1 space separate from the other pieces. And once I've done that, I'll take all those pieces and then I'll bring them back into the 0, 1 space combined. So let me show you what that process looks like. First off, let's turn on select by element and then polygon. Let's select the spoiler fin, spoiler, the car shell, and the carriage. Now let's also not forget the switch that's underneath here. I'm going to take that object, and underneath my type in values here, you'll see that I have U and I have V. U goes left to right, and then V goes top to bottom. Now I have my coordinate system that I could use for my type ins, and right now it's set to absolute. I want to set it to relative. So with that set to relative, let's type in 1 on our U and hit enter. Notice how those UVs move over 1 grid space. Now let's take everything else inside that 0 and 1 space, and let's move that to the left. So I'm going to type in -1 and hit enter. Alright, now with everything off to the left there, let's select everything over here again, and let's simply hit pack UVs. That's going to pack that into this 0 to 1 space. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to basically just pack these as closely as I can together, and then we could come in and even combine other parts. But I'm just going to stick to these for right now, and we'll talk about combining the rest of these here in just a little bit. First off, let's turn off that background to make this easier to see. And I know that this is not going to fill up this UV space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this up a little bit, and I'm going to fit my objects in here, and let's start to maneuver these around to where they all fit together. So I'm going to drag that up just a little bit more. I just think that I can get a lot of space out of this. Okay, now I know that some of these are sticking out and things like that, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue, and we're just going to maneuver these. So let's take the fin. Let's make sure that we're selecting my element, and let's select that fin, and I'm going to bring it down here next to this one, and let's rotate it around where it fits something kind of like this. And let's go ahead and pull this down into this area, and let's try to fit these UVs together. So I'm going to put this right in here. Whoops. I'm going to take this one, see if I can't get that to fit in there. Let's rotate it around and see if we can get that to fit right into this position. And having just a little bit of difficulty, so we might want to scale everything down just a little bit. Now with all of these pieces selected, if I go to my checker pattern right here, notice that the checker pattern is consistent across all these pieces because they've been packed together. And so whenever I scale them and I'm trying to fit them, make sure that you scale them together, so that way you don't lose that consistent resolution between the objects. Okay, so I'm going to drag that down just a little bit, and I don't need to go quite that far. So we'll do something like this, and then I'm going to select those spoilers, fins, and let's pull that over again so that way it fits in there. Alright, so that's looking great. Now let's get the rest of these pieces in here. First we need to make sense of what is what exactly. So this is going to be the spoiler, and for me this is going to be really close to the camera, and it's going to need some higher texture resolution, so I'm going to make sure that it takes precedence over the other pieces. So I'm going to put it right up here in this corner, and I'm going to make sure that it's not overlapping with the car here. So I'm going to pull this down a little bit further and try to squeeze as much room out of these as I can. Okay, so those are not touching, very close, but not quite. Might take this up some to alleviate that. Okay, that looks great. So that looks good. We have this strip right here which goes to those fins. So I can actually put this vertical, and let me turn on my angle snap, because that will also allow me to snap those to an angle. It's easier to reach. There we go. Place that right in there. I'm going to hold down Shift and drag that straight down, and that just constrains your movement. We have that piece there. We have our spoiler sitting in place. We have the carriage. Now this is the top of the carriage, and most of this is going to be covered up by the shell itself, so we may want to make that a little bit lower resolution than the other piece or other pieces. The back here, we might see a little bit more of that, so we want to be careful with taking that resolution size down. Some of these areas that just aren't going to be seen, you can make those lower res. You don't have to stay consistent like that. Now, if it's all part of one object, so this UV and this UV are all part of one object, they need to be scaled together, because if they aren't, their normal map is not going to match up in resolution, so you're going to get some weird objects and some weird artifacting. So you want to go ahead and you want to scale those together, and then we'll bring those down just a little bit, and then we're going to try to fit these into the area. Now the switch itself, we could probably make that a little bit larger. It doesn't have to be quite that low. Whichever you prefer, you can do so. We also have this part of the switch, and I forgot all about that, so that's going to need to be scaled down. I'm going to go ahead and just scale it freehand and get it close to the same size as these other pieces. Pull that down, and this one. Let me take both of those and scale those back up just a little bit. Okay. So with these, let me go ahead and pull this guy right up here, and then I'm going to take this one and put it right in this area. Now you could come in and you could start to rotate these a little bit more, trying to get those to fit a little better, and it's just all about how you get that to sit in there. So here we've got a pretty good placement on all of these objects. Now, a couple of things that I don't necessarily like about this is that with all of these objects, we still have a lot of empty space here. And so what we want to try to do is we want to try and fill these spaces. And we want to try and fill from one corner outward and up. We don't want to try and fill over here and then try to fill on the opposite corner, because when you scale that, you'll have to reposition everything. So let's take this guy and let me pull that down as close as I can to these UVs. And let's take this guy and I'm going to pull it down and to the left as close as I can. The switch pieces here, let's pull these down. Let's just put them in that area. And then I have the spoiler, which is going to be a little difficult. It's going to have some problems with that, because if I rotate it, let's say 90 degrees, and I try to put that into position here, as you can see, it's not really allowing for that. I can put it up in that corner, but we're still having some problems with that. Same thing with the spoilers down here. I can't have my car body overlapping that. So there are some things that you need to kind of give and take with on your UV. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll rotate that back the other direction, and we'll put that right up here as close as we can to the UV here. I could go ahead and select these pieces, and then I could scale them up just a little bit to just try and get, you know, at least another pixel or two out of my UV space, but I don't think that we're going to really get that much. So we've combined those pieces. Okay, those have been worked on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to group those together. So go down here to element properties and we'll group that. Now we could come in and we could add in one more group to this object if we really wanted to. Thinking about that, we could come in and we could grab maybe these pieces here. Those seem to be getting a little bit larger. And then let me select this by group. And then let's select this. And if I hit pack on this, it's going to come together and it's going to make that group a little bit smaller, but then it's going to bring these pieces in. Now look at the pieces and the resolution size that we have here for the spring connectors. So the resolution is pretty low on those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to pack these pieces together. I'm going to scale those up. And let me get these pretty close to one another before we scale those. So I'm going to take this, and let me pull that over there. We have this tiny strip of UVs. Let's make sure that we're not overlapping any UVs. And we'll take that, and I'm going to pull this up, and then I'm going to start to scale that up a little bit more. Just a tiny bit, because it doesn't need that much resolution. Okay. So now you can see that everything is packing in nice and square. And then I can scale those up again. Reposition that into that UV space. Very, very close to being spot on there. Inside that space here. Looking at our top, we're all inside. At the bottom, fairly close. Let's go ahead and let's take just this object here, pull that up again. And then let's take this and let's pull that all the way over and under like so. Let's get these as close as possible. And again, notice that I'm trying to get them as close as possible down and to the left. I'm not pushing them right or up. Okay, because I'm just thinking that everything should kind of start to pack into one area. Okay, so we have that all grouped together. And I just noticed something really quick. I noticed that we have a seam here on our UV. So what I want to do is I want to come in and select those pieces. And let's not do by element. Let's select those two UVs. I'm going to right click and weld selected. That should snap together. You'll also want to make sure that you don't have any vertices that are apart here. But I think everything is okay. So we should be okay. All right. Now that we have this, okay, we've got everything together, we could try to add one more group. In this process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select this connector, and we're going to add that to the group here. Okay, I just feel like we can add in just one more piece in here somewhere. So with those selected, and well, before we select those, let's actually select all of these pieces that we've already UV'd, and let's do that by element. So now that we have everything here, let's group those, and then we're going to come over here, hold down Control and select that, and then we will pack that, and we get the same kind of result that we had before. And we're going to take these elements and we're going to bring those down into here. I'm going to take this, bring that over, And then I'm going to take all 4 of these, I'm going to lift those up just a tiny bit so I can get this guy right in there. So I'm going to hold down Shift, pull that over. Alright, so that's all of that. Let's select all of these pieces here. And then we're going to move that kind of toward the center, and then we'll scale it out. Now it looks like our last connector that we put in for the UVs is kind of sticking out a little bit. So we want to move it into a different position. One place that we can move it, maybe right in here, or place it right here. Okay, normally I want to try to keep the same kind of elements together, even if they are packed kind of funny. Okay, so now we have those. Have all those elements together. We could probably go ahead and start fitting in even another object. Start looking at the UVs themselves and start thinking about different ways that those can come together. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to break the lesson here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with a new set of elements. And we're going to bring those together just like we did in this one. And then we're going to try to get all of those finished up and then combine back together into one. So we'll start on that next.